My son gave me an impossible choice. Him or his wife. And I just smiled and walked away. I never imagined my life would turn out like this. At 65 years old, I thought I'd be surrounded by family, laughter, and peace. Instead, I found myself standing alone in a quiet apartment, heart aching and mind swirling with memories and regrets that my son Ethan was everything to me. From the moment he was born, I devoted my life to raising him. There were nights I stayed, awake just to watch him breathe. Mornings I made his favorite breakfast to start his day with a smile. And countless days I put my own needs aside so he could have the best life possible. I was a single mother, and I did everything in my power to be both mother and father to him. Ethan was a bright boy, curious, kind, and full of dreams. He told me once that he wanted to make the world better, and I believed him. I worked too, jobs when he was young, so he could attend good schools, have piano lessons, and join the local soccer team. I was proud of every achievement, every birthday, every little step he took toward becoming the man I hoped he would be. But then things started to change. When Ethan met Claire, I thought she was lovely at first. She was smart, confident, and seemed to care about him deeply. I welcomed her with open arms. I wanted to believe that she would be part of our family, my family, and that our bond would only grow stronger. At first, we got along well. Claire was warm around me, and I did my best to make her feel comfortable. But over time, I began to notice subtle shifts. The way she would glance at me with a hint of impatience. The way she asked questions that felt more like challenges. And most painfully, how Ethan's tone changed when he spoke to me. Colder, sharper, less patient. I tried to ignore it at first. I told myself that marriage was a new chapter and that they were just finding their way. But then, one afternoon, Ethan sat down across from me, his eyes hard and voice steady. "Mom," he said, "this isn't easy to say, but you need to understand. Claire and I are a team now. I want you to respect that. You have to choose. Me or her." I blinked. The words hit me like a cold wave crashing against my chest. Choose? How could I possibly choose between my son and the woman he loved? Wasn't love supposed to bring people closer, not force them apart? I wanted to shout, to cry, to beg him to see reason. But instead, I smiled. I smiled because I was exhausted. Exhausted from years of fighting to keep my family together. Exhausted from sleepless nights and endless worry. And most of all, exhausted from loving a son who no longer seemed to want me in his life. Without saying another word, I stood up and left the room. I left because sometimes walking away is the only way to keep your dignity. Sometimes silence speaks louder than words. That night, I sat alone in my apartment, the walls closing in around me. I looked at old photographs on the shelf. Ethan as a baby, Ethan at his graduation, Ethan holding my hand as a child. I remembered all the times I had been there for him, and it broke my heart to think that he no longer wanted me there. But, even in the depths of that pain, a small flame of hope burned inside me. Because a mother's love doesn't vanish with a harsh word or a broken relationship. It waits. It waits for the day when her child might remember what she means. I didn't know when that day would come. I only knew that I wasn't ready to give up. After that day when Ethan gave me that impossible choice, everything between us seemed to change overnight. It was as if a wall had risen, thick and cold, between my son and me. A wall I couldn't climb over no matter how hard I tried. At first, I kept hoping it was just a phase, something temporary. I told myself that love, blood, and time would heal the cracks. So I tried to reach out, sending texts, calling his phone, even dropping by his apartment unannounced. But every attempt was met with silence or worse, cold politeness. One afternoon, I went to his place with a cake. It was his birthday. I wanted to surprise him, remind him that his mother still cared. I knocked gently on the door, heart pounding, but when Ethan opened it, his face was tight, unreadable. "Mum," he said quickly, stepping aside just enough for me to slip in. "Claire's here. We're busy." Claire greeted me with a polite smile, but I could see it wasn't genuine. There was something icy in her eyes, something that made me shrink inside. The cake sat untouched on the kitchen counter as I waited for Ethan to soften, to say something warm, but he barely spoke more. Then a few words. After a while, I told them I had to leave. Ethan walked me to the door, his shoulders stiff, and when I turned to say goodbye, he simply nodded. That was the last birthday we celebrated together. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. Ethan and Claire's visits to my home became rarer and shorter. Invitations to family dinners stopped altogether. I was no longer the mother who cooked for her son. I was the distant figure left out of their lives. Friends whispered that maybe I should try harder to accept Claire, to bend, for the sake of peace. But how do you bend when your heart is breaking? How do you accept someone who demands you choose between her and your own child? I spent countless nights staring at the ceiling, replaying every conversation, every argument, wondering where it all went wrong. I remembered the times I had asked Ethan to call me back, the times I had waited by the phone for hours. The silence was deafening. One evening, I received a message from Claire, short and cold. "We won't be coming to Thanksgiving. Don't expect us." It was the last straw. I wanted to reply with anger, with words that would cut as deep as those words had cut me. But instead, I felt only a tired sadness wash over me. I sat down at my kitchen table and cried quietly, tears falling like rain on an empty street. Despite the pain, I never stopped loving Ethan. I never stopped hoping he'd see through the walls and remember the bond we shared. The late-night talks, the birthday candles, the quiet moments of joy. But the harder I tried, the more distant he became. Then one day an unexpected call came. It was Ethan. His voice was strained, quieter than I remembered. "Mum," he said slowly, "we need to talk." My heart leapt, but fear gripped me too. What would he say? Was this the beginning of a reconciliation, or the final goodbye? I answered with a trembling voice, "I'm here." What followed was a conversation full of sharp edges and tears, of hurt and misunderstanding. Ethan told me about the pressures he felt, about how he needed space to build his own family. He said Claire wanted things clear and clean, no past, no messy family dramas. I listened, my own pain swelling beneath my calm words. When he finished, I told him something I hadn't dared say before. "Ethan, I don't want to come between you and Claire. I only want to be part of your life, not as an obstacle, but as your mother. But if choosing me means losing you, then I will let you go. I love you enough to set you free." There was silence on the other end. Then Ethan whispered, "I don't want to lose you either." It was the first crack in the wall, that the journey to rebuild what was broken would take time, more than either of us knew. For now, the distance remained, but beneath it, the roots of love were still there, waiting for the right moment to grow again. The days after that difficult phone call were some of the longest I'd ever lived. The silence between Ethan and me was no longer filled with anger, but with an uncertain hope, fragile and delicate like a bird's first flight. Started to understand that healing wouldn't be instant. It wasn't going to be like the movies where people suddenly forgive, forget, and walk into the sunset. No, this was real life, slow, messy, and painful. I made a promise to myself. I would be patient. I would wait. And I would love without conditions. The next few weeks were a quiet dance of small steps. Ethan began sending me messages. Nothing long, just simple texts. Thinking of you. Hope you're well. Dinner next week. Each one was a small victory. A thread woven back into the fabric of our relationship. One Sunday afternoon, he showed up at my door unexpectedly. Claire was busy with work, so he said he wanted to visit. Just the two of us. We sat on the old porch swing where he used to play as a child. The air was warm with spring sunlight, the scent of blooming jasmine filling the quiet spaces. I'm sorry, Mum, he said finally, his voice rough with emotion. I should have never put you in that position. I was scared of losing what we had. I reached out and took his hand. I was scared too, Ethan, but I've never stopped loving you. That day, we talked for hours, about mistakes, about hopes, about fears. We cried, we laughed, and slowly, the wall between us began to crumble. But it wasn't just about Ethan and me anymore. It was about all of us. Claire, me, Ethan, and the family we were trying to rebuild. Claire reached out next, cautiously, asking if she could come over to talk. I wasn't sure how to feel, but deep down I wanted to try. When she arrived, I saw a different side of her. Tired, vulnerable, a woman caught between love for her husband and the unspoken tension that had shaped our years. We talked openly, sharing stories, fears, and even laughter. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't easy, but it was honest. The day came when we all sat down together. Me, Ethan, Claire, at my kitchen table. We didn't need words to tell the world we were trying. We just needed presence, the willingness to listen, and the courage to forgive. It wasn't magic. There were setbacks, arguments, misunderstandings, moments when the past crept back in like a shadow. But every time, we chose to hold on. To each other, to family. Months later, I watched as Ethan and Claire held hands across the dinner table, sharing smiles with me and the grandchildren. I realized something profound. Family isn't about being perfect. It's about choosing love, even when it's hard, even when it hurts. That night, I sat alone on the porch swing, the stars twinkling above. My heart was full. I whispered a prayer of thanks, for patience, for grace, and for the chance to keep loving my son without conditions. And I knew, no matter what comes next, I would always choose love.